near the South Platte River crossing, sitting in the sun with its lid open and no one to play it. These weren't things people had packed carelessly. They were things people had packed with hope and calculation, convinced they could make it work, and then abandoned in the hard arithmetic of survival somewhere in Nebraska or Wyoming when the oxen started dropping and the math stopped adding up. The guidebooks didn't tell them the truth. This is the first and most important myth to dismantle. Not just the myth about riding, but the myth that the emigrants went in well informed. They didn't. The guidebooks available to Oregon Trail emigrants in the 1840s and early 1850s were a mix of genuine intelligence, cheerful optimism, and outright fiction, and the people who wrote them, in many cases, had never made the journey themselves. The most influential early guide was Lansford Hastings' Emigrant's Guide to Oregon and California, published in 1845, a book that promised a shortcut through the Great Basin that would save hundreds of miles and weeks of travel. Hastings had looked at the route on a map. He hadn't walked it. When the Donner Party followed his Hastings cut-off in 1846, they found terrain so brutal, so waterless, so nothing like what the guide described, that they lost weeks rather than saving them, weeks that put them in the Sierra Nevada in October, when the passes were already threatening to close. The guidebooks also fundamentally misrepresented the emotional and physical reality of the journey. They described the prairie as park-like. They described river crossings as manageable. They described the distances between water sources in the desert sections as challenging but achievable. None of these descriptions were dishonest in a deliberately malicious way. They were the descriptions of people who needed readers to believe the journey was possible, which it was, but who shaded that belief into something that felt close to comfortable, which it was not. Here's something even less discussed. The famous wagon itself wasn't purpose-built for the Oregon Trail. It was adapted. The vehicle that became the prairie schooner was derived from the Conestoga wagon of Pennsylvania, a large boat-hulled freight hauler used to move commercial goods across the Appalachians. The Oregon Trail version was scaled down from the Conestoga because the Conestoga was simply too heavy for the terrain and the animals available. But scaled down didn't mean designed for human habitation. The wagon was still, at its core, a freight hauler. The curved sideboards that gave it a vaguely nautical look weren't aesthetic choices. They were structural.